Brooklyn Nets star Kyrie Irving won't see any playing time at home or away as long as he refuses to get vaccinated against COVID-19. The Nets general manager, Sean Marks, released this statement saying, Kyrie has made a personal choice and we respect his individual right to choose. Currently, the choice restricts his ability to be a full-time member of the team, and we will not permit any member of our team to participate with part-time availability. Joining us now is Cari Champion. She is a former ESPN anchor, and she is the host of the new podcast, Naked with Cari Champion. Thank you, Cari, so much for being with us. What is your reaction here to this decision by the Brooklyn Nets?
Well, I think they're in a pretty tough situation, like a lot of these teams are, but they have to make an example and let it be with Kyrie. I have to give you background on this. Back in 2019, this version of the Brooklyn Nets would not exist. Kyrie was the lead recruiter, if you will, bringing on Kevin Durant, bringing on other players and said, let's do this. Let's go after some sort of championship. And here he is finding himself in a situation where reporting is being said that he's not so much an anti-vaxxer. He just feels as if he's being forced to do something he shouldn't do, and he wants to be, quote unquote, a leader, if you will. I joked about this the other day on social media that he wanted to start some sort of movement. I don't know what movement this is, but he really truly believes he's speaking up for those who don't have a voice. So now the league finds itself without one of its stars because he has to play, or he can't play, rather. And now he's looking around wanting to do more. What I think is unfortunate, though, is that his message, or whatever message he believes he's choosing, is being co-opted. There are people saying, oh, well, he should not be forced. On the right side, I believe in him. Donald Trump Jr. tweeting at him. And that is not even what this is about. And I have said this on many occasions about these athletes who choose not to talk about getting a vaccine. Their message, whatever it may be, could be totally separate from what a political message could be. But it's being co-opted, and they need to understand that they are really making a choice that speaks volumes about where we are in society today.
Yeah, Cari, I wonder, whatever, if he and those around him are saying he doesn't want to be co-opted by the right, by those who are against this vaccine. That language that people close to him told The Athletic, right, that this is just something where he's not anti-vax, but he's upset with people losing their jobs to mandates, the perceived control of society and people's livelihood. That is the fig leaf that people often on the right, use when it comes to being against this vaccine. Why does he realize that, do you think? And why is he ready to kill his career on this hill?
That is such a great question. I was in a group chat the other day with some other people who've covered Kyrie as well. And, he's the guy. I don't know if you remember when he went to go as a Brooklyn Net play the Celtics. In practice, he was burning sage on the court just before he went out there. He's a different type of guy. He's a different dude. He thinks differently. He moves differently. Remember the flat earth. So I take all of that into consideration, and I really truly think he doesn't believe how his message is being co-opted by the right. I think he truly believes he's doing something, and it's unfortunate because I have said over and over again, these players, while they talk about they want to speak up for someone, or they want to do more research, I just feel as if they sound like they don't know what they're talking about. And I don't want to say that in a dismissive way, but there is so much on the line here. And I do believe Kyrie will give up his career just to prove a point. He's that kind of guy. He will give up his career to prove a point. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. I did hear that he could go to practice on Sunday, but at the end of the day, Kyrie will make a decision unlike any other. His career, if you look back on its history, says that he does what he likes when he feels.
Yeah, we will see. We'll see if this is the hill that he kills his career on. Cari, great to see you.
You too, Brianna.